What lies beneath the hood? Picture this. It's market day in a medieval village. The air is dense with smoke, livestock stench, and the sour sweat of peasants packed shoulder to shoulder. A juggler flings burning clubs beside a rotting vegetable cart. Children shriek, dogs bark. Someone yells about heretical cheese. Then silence rolls in like fog. Everyone turns. A cloaked figure moves to the crowd, dragging a cart creaking under the weight of something large, wrapped in oil leather. The smell of iron and dry blood waft behind him. He's not just part of the scene, he is the scene. The executioner has arrived. But who is he, really? A monster? A martyr? A necessary evil? Or just another man trapped in a job no one else wanted, wearing a reputation stitched from centuries of fear and ignorance? The medieval executioner is often reduced to caricature, a brute with a hood, an axe, and zero empathy. But the reality is more complex, more tragic, and infinitely more human. Beneath the hood wasn't just a face. It was an entire system of societal hypocrisy, wrapped in leather and stained with sanctioned blood. The man behind the blade. Executioners weren't all born killers. Many inherited the job through family lines, a grotesque kind of legacy that passed down not just tools, but trauma. Others were criminals offered clemency in exchange for service, trading one death sentence for a lifetime of issuing them. Once appointed, they were both indispensable and detested. Towns needed them but wouldn't look them in the eye. They couldn't shop freely, worship openly, or marry whomever they chose. In some towns, they were forced to wear bells to alert people of their presence, as if they were walking plagues. Their homes were often near execution sites, cemeteries, or outside city walls. Children threw rocks at their doors. Clergy denied them last rites. Their own families were tainted by association. Daughters struggled to marry. Sons were expected to continue the work. Tools of the trade. The executioner's arsenal was a twisted toolkit of pain. Axes for beheading commoners. Swords, long, elegant, for nobility, because even in death class mattered. Branding irons for thieves. Ropes for hangings. Racks, wheels, thumbscrews. A torture manual in iron and wood. And the infamous hood? That wasn't always part of the job. Many worked barefaced, known to all. The hood was symbolic, part anonymity, part theatrics, part myth. In some cases, it was adopted as protection, not from justice, but from recognition. Being seen meant being hunted. Performance and precision. Public executions weren't just punishments. They were events. The executioner had to perform, not just kill, but do it cleanly, swiftly, and dramatically. A poorly aimed strike could ignite riots. Too slow, and the crowd turned hostile. Too quick, and they felt cheated of their grotesque entertainment. It was a profession of paradoxes. You had to be brutal yet precise, feared yet ignored, present yet invisible. The unseen humanity. Some executioners tried to show mercy. They offered quick deaths, whispered final words of comfort, allowed convicts to pray. Others refused to torture, or took pride in a single, clean stroke. Many were religious men who saw their role as divine judgment, not cruelty. They cried, they drank, they had nightmares. But no one asked. The emotional toll. Imagine holding the weight of 100 deaths in your hands. Imagine walking through a town that spits at your feet, but demands your service. Imagine your child asking why the other kids call you a monster. Now imagine knowing you'll never be forgiven for doing what they asked you to do. The purpose of this story. This chapter isn't just about the executioner. It's about the people who made him necessary. It's about the crowd that cheered, the judge who signed the order, the society that craved blood but feared bloodshed. It's about us. In Chapter 2, we'll uncover how one actually became an executioner. Spoiler, it wasn't a glamorous hiring process. Think fewer interviews, more inherited damnation. Like comment, subscribe, and share, or next time there's a job opening for a blade wielder, your name might be first on the list. How do you become an executioner? Becoming a medieval executioner wasn't exactly a childhood dream. No kid with a stick and an overactive imagination shouted, "When I grow up, I want to legally decapitate people." Unless, of course, they were born into the role, which, in most cases, they were. See, Being an executioner in the Middle Ages wasn't something you applied for. It was something you inherited, were punished into, or reluctantly accepted when the only other career option was starvation. Let's unravel the twisted, blood-stained career ladder that led someone to a life of sanctioned brutality. Option 1. The family legacy. Imagine being born into a world where your last name opens no doors, except the ones that lead to the scaffold. Executioner families were real and disturbingly common. In Germany, for example, the Requien and France families became synonymous with execution, passing down the profession like a cursed heirloom. The Sanson family in France executed people for over 200 years. It was the world's most dysfunctional family business. Children of executioners often had no choice. Social stigma barred them from joining guilds, marrying into reputable families, or even taking sacraments at church. It was a vicious cycle. The son of a butcher of men became, inevitably, the butcher himself. In some cases, they weren't even allowed to live within city walls. Training began early. You assist your father, maybe by prepping instruments, cleaning blood cell platforms, or helping restrain prisoners during torture. Not exactly a wholesome bonding experience. Your school books were anatomy charts, your toys were iron cuffs, and your bedtime stories came from the mouths of convicts begging for mercy. Option 2. The criminal turned cutter. Sometimes a job found you in the darkest hour. A condemned man might be spared the noose if he agreed to wield it instead. Towns that couldn't attract executioners through traditional methods because, shocker, no one wanted the job, would offer death row inmates a deal: swing the axe or die by it. A medieval internship program. Except instead of fetching coffee, you beheaded people. These men were rarely trained. Their first few jobs were often sloppy, painful, and met with public outrage. There are accounts of botched executions where the headsman took 5 or 6 swings to finish the job. The crowd would scream. Clergy would faint. Someone would always throw a turnip. And yet, with enough time and enough bodies, even the worst novice learned the anatomy of a neck. Option 3. The desperate volunteer. And then there were the willing, a rare breed of man, or on occasion woman, who accepted the job voluntarily. Maybe they were outcasts already. Maybe they craved the power. Or maybe, just maybe, they believed in justice and saw the role as divine duty. Some towns made the job more appealing by offering homes, land, or immunity from taxes. Others threw in the bonus of legal immunity. If you were the law's instrument, after all, the law would protect you. But that didn't mean the townsfolk would. Volunteers were still shunned. Market vendors refused to sell to them. Barmaids avoided eye contact. Children crossed the street. They lived among people who needed them, but never wanted to see them at dinner. Training, a bloody apprenticeship. Proper executioners were expected to be precise. The blade had to land just right, with enough force to sever spine and muscle cleanly. An executioner who botched his job wasn't just inefficient. He was a liability. Poor performance could ignite riots. In some towns, executioners who fumbled were themselves executed. They trained on animals, on corpses, on condemned criminals too broken to care. They studied bones, practiced knots, learned how to break bodies on wheels without killing instantly. Torture wasn't random, it was art. A twisted, methodical, legally sanctioned art. The tools of death. Executioners carried a kit more terrifying than a medieval doctor's. Axes for decapitations. Long sword for nobility, because a gentleman must die with style. Gallows for hangings. Branding irons, thumbscrews, iron boots, and racks. Boiling vats and drowning barrels. Some kept special tools for women. Pregnant offenders were hanged after childbirth. If they were lucky, the executioner's wardrobe, practical and menacing. Leathers for blood, hoods for anonymity, or simply to intimidate. In reality, many were barefaced. When you're the only one in town with a license to kill, hiding is pointless. A career with no retirement plan. There was no pension, no ceremony, no gold watch after decades of decapitations. Most died in poverty, madness, or violence. Their children inherited not just the tools, but the trauma. The irony? Society despised them, but couldn't function without them. Executioners were the physical manifestation of justice, fear, and order. the ones who did the dirty work, so the rest of the town could sleep at night, pretending the world was fair. So next time someone romanticizes medieval chivalry, remind them of the man whose job it was to end lives for a living, whose children were born cursed, and whose handshake was probably avoided like the plague. Because, let's be honest, he probably also carried that too. In Chapter 3, we'll follow a full day in the life of a working executioner. Meals, murders, maintenance, and maybe a little light torture before lunch. Like, comment, subscribe, and share, where you'll find yourself on the business end of the job application written in blood. A day in the life of a professional death dealer. Dawn doesn't rise gently for the executioner. It stabs through the shutters like judgment. Outside, the town yawns awake. Blacksmiths reignite their forges. Pigs squeal in wooden pens, and traders haul carts of half-rotted produce into a square still stained with dried blood. But at the very edge of town, in a crooked cottage bordering the graveyard, the man who holds a blade begins his day. He doesn't wake to birdsong. He wakes to silence. Heavy, familiar, punishing. 6 o'clock, the morning ritual. He moves like a man haunted, but precise. His first act is always to sharpen the blades. Axes, swords, knives, not for aesthetics, but because dull steel means agony, and agony means riots. He knows this. He's seen it. He checks the ropes. Thick, scratchy hemp coil like venomous snakes. Then the rack's pulleys, the branding irons, the cage with the iron spikes. All must be ready. All must function without flaw. Today, someone will die, but the tools must not. His breakfast is mechanical. Black bread, hard cheese, water that tastes faintly of iron. He eats facing the wall. The window is shuttered. He knows the sun has risen only by the shadow creeping under the door. 7:30 aftermath management. Yesterday's sentence must still be cleared. He steps into the square, where flies already buzz over the platform. Blood darkens the wood. A piece of ear lies in the dirt. The gallows creaks from a breeze that smells of decay. He hauls what remains, a headless body, a broken limb, splintered bone fragments, into a cart. No prayers, no ceremony. He digs a shallow pit outside town, dumps the flesh in, and burns the rest. Some days, he finds children watching from the trees. They don't laugh. They never laugh. 9 o'clock, torture time. He is summoned by the magistrate. A prisoner has refused to confess. A thief, or maybe a dissenter. He doesn't ask. He preps the chamber, lights the brazier, dips the iron. The room smells of mold, iron, and secrets. He straps the prisoner down. Slowly, deliberately. The screams come like clockwork. But they're not what haunt him. It's the silence after. The moment when the broken man sobs, "I'll tell you everything." That's when the executioner stops being a tool and becomes a memory the prisoner will never outrun. 11 o'clock, preparation for spectacle. Today, the crowd demands blood. He assembles the platform with ritualistic care, checks the bolts, sharpens the axe again, stands over the block to measure its position to the sun. The condemned is led forward. A nobleman this time, arrogant until the last step. Then the begging begins. They all beg eventually. The executioner doesn't speak. He listens. That is part of the job, being the last one to hear their truth. 12 o'clock, execution. The crowd has gathered. Hundreds of them. Children, merchants, beggars, nobles. They want a show. They want blood to distract from their empty bowls and swollen feet. He walks onto the platform like an actor in a sacred play. The condemned is positioned. A hush. A heartbeat. One swing. Two if unlucky. A geyser of crimson arcs into the air. The crowd roars. The executioner holds up the head, then drops it like a butcher discarding waste. 1,300 hours. A meal in shadow. He eats alone. Always. Even if others sit nearby, no one dares speak. The food is dry. The ale bitter. The silence heavier than the axe. Sometimes, someone makes the mistake of whispering, then choking laughter. But he doesn't turn around. He's heard worse than jokes. 1,400 hours. Smaller duties, smaller sins. A woman is flogged for adultery. A man branded for fraud. A teenager's fingers broken for theft. These are routine. They don't even register anymore. His motions are mechanical, precise. He measures pain the way others measure time. 1,600 hours, the ledger of shadows. Back home, he writes it all down. Names, methods, results. A ledger of the damned. He wonders if anyone will ever read it. If someone centuries from now will say, this was a man, he doubts it. 1,800 hours, the hour of echoes. As night approaches, he sharpens the blades again, not because they need it, but because it keeps his hands busy, keeps the thoughts quiet. He listens to the town settle, dogs barking, doors slamming, the distant echo of someone crying. Maybe the widow of the man he killed. Maybe not. 2,000 hours, dreams of blood and silence. He lies in his cot, eyes wide open. He hears the crowd, always the crowd. Their cheer, their silence, the thump of a head in a basket. He dreams of standing in an empty square, axe in hand, with no one to kill. And that terrifies him more than anything. The timekeeper of death. He is not just a man. He is the rhythm of punishment, the heartbeat of law, the unsung psalm of cruelty wrapped in ritual. No days off, no legacy, just the promise of tomorrow. In Chapter 4, we meet the one who made this rhythm echo through history, an executioner whose name didn't fade. Like comment, subscribe, and share, or wake up at a job offer no one sane wants to accept. The man who killed a king, Charles Henry Sanson, in the bloody annals of European justice. Few names slice deeper than Charles Henry Sanson, the man who executed Louis XVI, and by doing so, cleave a head not only from a king, but from centuries of divine right monarchy. This wasn't just a job. This was history swinging an axe. Let's rewind with a sharper lens. The Sanson family was not merely involved in the execution business. They monopolized it in Paris for over 6 generations. Think of them as the Michelin-starred butchers of the Ancien Regime. Charles Henry's great-grandfather began the tradition, his grandfather perfected it, and his father institutionalized it. By the time it was Charles Henry's turn, the Sanson name didn't just carry a reputation. It carried a curse. Born in 1739 into this bloodline of blades, Charles Henry was raised with a scalpel in one hand and a shadow over his head. But he wasn't a brute by nature. He studied medicine, aspired to heal rather than harm, and is said to have been a soft-spoken, methodical man. He played the violin. He was reportedly gentle with animals. And yet fate, or rather, family duty, dragged him back to the block. When his father fell ill, Charles Henry was forced to abandon his medical ambitions and assume the mantle of Paris's chief executioner. His rise coincided with one of the most turbulent eras in French history, the twilight of absolute monarchy and the dawn of revolutionary chaos. And through it all, Charles Henry stood at the center, axe in hand, a reluctant priest at the altar of justice. He didn't just swing a blade. He redefined execution. It was Charles Henry who oversaw the implementation of the guillotine, a device designed not for spectacle, but for egalitarian efficiency. Recommended by Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin and engineered by Tobias Schmidt, the guillotine was meant to be a humane, democratic killing machine, and Sanson was its most prolific conductor. Under his hand, over 3,000 heads rolled, including kings, queens, nobles, and commoners alike. From traitors to political scapegoats to poor souls accused of petty theft, the blade showed no favoritism, and neither could Sanson. He didn't cheer. He didn't revel. He executed with grim precision. He was a silent technician of revolutionary rage. January 21st, 1793. Paris held its breath. Louis XVI, once ruler by divine right, stood atop a scaffold built by the very people who had once bowed to him. Sanson, ever professional, ensured the king's death was swift. Accounts say he pulled the cord and the blade fell with a hiss and a crunch that echoed through history. In his private writings, Sanson expressed no triumph, only fatigue, regret, the existential weight of a man whose job had outpaced his morality. He drank, he withdrew. Some say he became a shell, haunted by the eyes of those who looked up at him from a platform. And yet, his role wasn't over. The reign of terror soon gripped France, and the guillotine worked overtime. Day after day, citizens were marched to their deaths. Some guilty, many not. Political tides shifted so fast that yesterday's hero was today's enemy. Sanson became a cog in a machine that no longer knew what it was grinding. He executed nobles, revolutionaries, even Robespierre himself. He didn't protest. He didn't gloat. He just kept cutting, even after the terror ended. Sanson remained in his post, passing the bloodstained legacy to his son Henri. By now, the Sanson name had become synonymous with death, but also with discipline, with a cold, efficient kind of integrity. Charles Henri retired in 1795, physically and emotionally spent. He died in 1806, not from vengeance or disease, but from a fall off his own carriage, a bizarre, anticlimactic death for a man whose hands had ushered thousands into eternity. His legacy is a paradox. He was an agent of death, but a stickler for justice. He believed in order, in duty, in not letting personal beliefs cloud the blade. He respected his victims, offering clean deaths, sometimes even whispering words of comfort. He was the last face many ever saw, and he made sure it was not one of cruelty, but of calm. Charles Henri Sanson didn't kill because he wanted to. He killed because someone had to, and no one else could do it without turning justice into theater. He turned murder into ritual, spectacle into protocol. He wasn't a monster. He was the man history needed to pull the lever when everyone else turned their heads. In Chapter 5, we'll abandon the scaffold and step into your shoes. What if you were asked to do his job? What if society pointed at you and said, "It's your turn"? How would you hold the axe? Like, comment, subscribe, and share, or you might just find your ancestors whispering from the gallows. What if you were the executioner? All right, let's drop the history books and drag you straight into the dirt. Forget Charles Henri Sanson. Forget the robes and rituals. This time, it's your neck on the societal chopping block, and the axe is in your hand. Imagine this. You're a peasant in a medieval town. Your clothes reek of pig manure. Your stomach growls louder than the church bell, and you just stolen a stale loaf of bread from a market stall to a man who spits when he says your name. The next day, someone else is caught stealing. But instead of a whipping, the punishment is death. And there's no one left to carry it out. The town's executioner died last week of blood poisoning. Ironic for someone surrounded by so much of it. And the local lord needs a new one. He scans the crowd, sees your trembling hands, and smiles. Do the job, he says, or take his place on the block. No training, no choice. Just you, a rusted axe, and a mob of villagers who hated you before, but now hate you more, because now you're the face of death, the first day on the job. Let's say you nod. What choice do you have? They give you the dead man's coat. It still smells of blood and burnt lard, and leads you to the wooden scaffold. The condemned is already kneeling, muttering a prayer. His crime? Arguing with a tax collector. The priest won't meet your eyes. The crowd chant for blood, their voices rolling like a storm. Your vision narrows. You raise the axe. You swing, but your hands shake. The blade lands off-center. A scream follows. A second swing is needed, then a third. By the fourth, the crowd isn't chanting anymore. You've just become a professional. The weight of the blade. It's not just the steel that weighs heavy. It's the stares. Eyes of the dying. Eyes of the watching. Eyes of the baker, who won't sell to you anymore. Eyes of your own reflection when you try to wash the blood from your fingers and it just won't come off. The children cross the street. The dogs growl. The priest avoids your shadow. Even the rats seem to scurry faster when you pass. What happens to your soul? The first night you vomit. The second, you drink. The third, you start to hum tunes to drown out the silence. You try to justify it. It's the law. They deserve it. Better me than someone worse. But then a child is brought to you. 14, eyes wide, face dirty. He stole a coin from the Lord's purse. You know what's coming. Make it quick, the guard says. Your fingers twitch. The axe feels heavier, not because of steel, but because you remember when you were that boy, and now you're about to erase him. Daily routine of a reluctant reaper. You wait before dawn. Clean the tools. Scrub dried blood from wood and leather. Practice your swing on sacks of grain. Perform executions before breakfast. Torture confessions before lunch. Mutilations before sundown. You're paid in coin. No one dares short you. But the blacksmith leaves your horseshoes crooked. The innkeeper serves your ale flat. Your wife cries when she thinks you're asleep. You used to sleep. Now you count heartbeats. Modern parallels. The desk executioner. Think we've moved on? Think again. Today's executioners don't carry axes. They carry pens, policies, and passwords. They sign the pink slip that ruins a family's income. They program the drone that flattens a village. They vote to defund mental health care, and then wonder why people break. Would you press the button? Sign the form? Cut the funding? The blade looks different now, but it still cuts just as deep. Absurd empathy. The executioner's therapist. You go to a medieval therapist. He's really just a guy with a leech jar and good posture. You say, I killed a man today, and now I see his eyes in my soup. He prescribes honey, garlic, and spiritual flagellation. He charges double. You go home. Your daughter won't kiss you goodnight. Your son calls you monster in a whisper. Your dog won't sleep in your room. You start naming the crows that gather near your house. They seem to understand. Now ask yourself, who would you become? Would you grow numb or meticulous? Would you learn to enjoy it, or would you lose yourself in shame? Would you whisper prayers for the dying, or start humming as the axe falls? Would you keep going, or would you eventually step onto the scaffold, lay down your own head, and ask someone else to swing? In Chapter 6, we'll drag this nightmare into now, because the executioner never really disappeared. He just changed uniforms. From iron and leather to suits and ties. Like comment, subscribe, and share, or next time someone points a blade, it might be at you, and the guy holding it might just be wearing your face. The executioners of today. So, you survived medieval justice. You swung the axe. You buried the guilt. You whisper apologies to the ghosts that now sleep under your floorboards. But what if I told you the executioner never really went away? He just changed uniforms. Welcome to the 21st century, where the hood's been swapped for a blazer, the axe replaced by a keyboard, and justice outsources systems with smiley logos and slick PR campaigns. The brutality hasn't gone away. It's just been repackaged as efficiency. Modern tools, same outcome. Today's executioners don't shout in town squares. They whisper in boardrooms. They don't leave blood on the scaffold. They leave signatures on policy drafts and denial letters. They operate in air-conditioned anonymity, shielded by protocols, terms of service, and legal fine print. They don't pull levers. They automate them. They are judges signing off on three-strike laws that imprison lives into oblivion. They are legislators who defund social care while investing in prisons. They are tech developers optimizing facial recognition systems that accidentally target minorities 87% of the time. Digital guillotines. Imagine this. Somewhere in a cubicle, an algorithmic designer coded a routine that deprioritizes emergency room visits from underfunded neighborhoods. A machine learning model scans resumes and flags ethnic-sounding names as unqualified. A government contractor programs surveillance tools that treat peaceful assembly like terrorism. No screams, no gallows, just dashboards, metrics, PowerPoints. The blade no longer swings. It updates in real time, and when the damage is done, the digital executioner logs off, orders takeout, maybe catches a crime show on Netflix. Bureaucracy with a body count. Ever heard the phrase, I was just following orders? That's the new morality code. The white-collar executioner doesn't choose the victims. They process the paperwork. They file the form. They forward the email. A child loses food assistance because of a clerical error. A refugee is deported because a box wasn't checked. A mother dies because her insurance claim was denied for being filed 3 days late. No one sees the blood, but it pools all the same. The new spectacle, trial by social media. We are not just surrounded by executioners. We are part of performance. In the digital coliseum, we don't wait for justice. We manufacture it. One tweet, one hashtag, One, did you hear about? And boom, someone's life is ruined. No investigation, no appeal, just a mob with memes and a thirst for public shame. And unlike the medieval crowd, we never disperse. We're always watching, always judging, always ready to scream, off with their head, with a share button. Who wields a blade now? It's the human resources manager sending a layoff notice during a pandemic, the landlord evicting tenants at midnight, the CEO profiting off of low-wage labor while tweeting about mental health awareness. It's you when you click report, not because it's wrong, but because you're annoyed. The executioner now wears 1,000 faces, most of them smiling. Absurd empathy, the white-collar executioner. You walk into your co-working space. Plan on your desk. Inspirational quote on your coffee mug. You click through a series of approvals. One of them terminates a contract. A single mother won't be able to pay rent this month. You finish early. Your boss praises your speed. Your Slack channel sends you an emoji. That night, you stare at your own reflection and feel nothing. Or maybe you do, just enough to order a second glass of wine. Now, ask again, who would you become? Would you question the chain of command? Would you risk your paycheck to stop the machinery? Or would you rationalize it all? Tell yourself you're too small to matter? Execution today is cleaner, quieter, more compartmentalized. But the trauma, the moral erosion, the complicity, still medieval. In Chapter 7, we'll bring the blade full circle, looking at how society used, abused, and discarded its executioners when they were no longer convenient. Like comment, subscribe, and share, or the next execution might come with Wi-Fi, a badge, and your signature at the bottom. Disposable killers. When the executioner outlives his usefulness, you've done your job, swung the axe, followed the orders, pressed the button, signed the form. You've been the blade and the bureaucrat, the face behind the mask and the name behind the policy. And now, you're no longer needed. History has a cruel little trick. It forgets its enforcers the moment their hands start to tremble. The executioner is a fire that warms a house, until the house is built and the fire becomes a threat. The fate of the medieval executioner. In the Middle Ages, executioners were feared, but never loved. Respected? Rarely. Necessary? Always. Until they weren't. When the wars ended, when the trials slowed, when the gallows grew dusty, towns no longer needed someone to swing steel for them. What happened then? Some were quietly dismissed. Others were scapegoated for the very violence they were once ordered to carry out. Many died in poverty, madness, or anonymity. Some were killed by mobs. Others were simply forgotten. In Nuremberg, Nazi officers invoked the same defense. I was just following orders. It didn't save them, because history punishes the visible hand, not the mind that gave the command. The forgotten lives behind the blade. Executioners lived in social exile. Even in retirement, they were marked. Some changed their names. Others moved to distant towns where no one knew their past. But the stigma clung like dried blood. In cities like Nuremberg, Bern, and Prague, executioners were buried outside city walls, literally excluded from sacred ground. Their homes were built on the fringes, often near slaughterhouses or cemeteries. A cruel metaphor. Too useful to discard, too filthy to embrace. In a grotesque twist of irony, some executioners became healers. Medieval societies, lacking physicians who would touch the untouchable, turned to men who knew anatomy best, those who killed for a living. And so the hands that once cut throats began setting bones and stitching wounds. Useful, again, until they weren't. Modern mirrors. Fast forward to now. You were the compliance officer who oversaw the wrongful terminations, the government analyst who flagged the wrong names, the lobbyist who whispered poison into legislation. You got your salary, your vacation time, your LinkedIn endorsements. Then scandal, public backlash, policy change, a screenshot surfaces, your face in a thread, your inbox flooded with fire emojis. The company releases a bland statement. This does not reflect our values. Your badge stops working. Your email is deactivated. HR tells you it's not personal. Of course not. It never was. You're not a hero. You're not a villain. You're just a liability. The echo of guilt. Years pass. You're not on TV. You're not in books. You're not remembered at all. But you remember every name, every call, every file. You replay moments in your head like old newsreels. You see yourself on the scaffold, but the crowd is gone. You're swinging for no one. You write apologies you'll never send. You prepare speeches for no audience. You dream of gallows, not boardrooms. Of mobs, not meetings. Your usefulness expired. Your service forgotten. And yet, the guilt lingers like a watermark, because justice doesn't keep receipts. Only regrets. Final reflection. In the end, the executioner is a reflection of the society that created him, wielded when convenient, discarded when uncomfortable. The blade always falls, but the hand that held it is the first to bleed when history turns. So ask yourself, when your usefulness ends, when your hands are no longer steady, will the system remember your service, or will it pretend it never handed you the axe? Series outro and call to action. This was the hidden side of medieval executioners that no one remembers. If you survived this far, congratulations. You walked through blood, bureaucracy, and backroom betrayals. From cobblestones to cubicles, from guillotines to gigabytes, the executioner's shadow still lingers. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Or hey, next time society needs a blade, maybe your name will be called, and no one will remember you either.